Here are the top 10 reasons why Chris Jericho, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, Y2J, the learning tree, will come back to WWE this year. Chris Jericho's contract is supposedly up with AEW. AEW in 2022 posted on their website that Chris Jericho has signed a contract extension through 2025. It's 2026, and it's February 2026, and Chris Jericho didn't show up on the first Raw on Netflix of the new year. He didn't show up at the Royal Rumble. He didn't show up at Saturday night's main event. Chris Jericho has been a ghost. He also hasn't returned back to AEW, but if you look at the AEW roster page, and I've been checking this a lot, like I'm sure you have over the past month or two, Chris Jericho's profile is still on there. A guy like Powerhouse Hobbs, now going by Royce Keys, his profile was removed almost immediately after it was reported that his contract had expired. A lot of speculation is that there's a freeze on the contract. We've seen companies do this. I remember years ago when WWE did this with Rey Mysterio's contract. People lost their minds. It's become more of a normal thing in wrestling over the past, 10, 15 years. You see this happen a lot. Without further ado, though, let's get into it. Top 10 reasons why Chris Jericho, I hope you love the sign, is coming back to WWE. First off, Chris Jericho has worn out his welcome in AEW. When he first joined in 2019, he was the big star that they needed. When you heard that Chris Jericho had signed on with AEW, you thought, man, wouldn't TNA kill to have a name like this? And this new company is bringing in Y2J. Saying that, though, that was 2019. It's 2026. 7 years is a long time, and Jericho is not a guy who gets hurt a lot. The only reason why he hasn't been on TV is because he's doing his own thing. I don't know if Tony shelved him or not, but the fact that Tony was able to shelf this guy, one of the top wrestlers of all time, I would say top 15 wrestlers of all time, arguably, how you could be so fine with shelving him. It's because Jericho was just worn out his run at AEW. He's wrestled every big name that you could possibly wrestle. He's wrestled Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, the newer guys too, MJF he's had a feud with. Chris Jericho does not need to be at AEW anymore, whether Tony Khan likes to admit that or not. Number 2, WWE needs a big Hall of Fame marquee name to induct this year. Stephanie McMahon was announced in September, and all due respect to Stephanie, she doesn't do it for me, man. Stephanie was never an all-time wrestler. Stephanie was, to be honest with you, I don't know if this was the character that she was playing, kind of the thorn in the side. Stephanie was annoying, man. She was the authority figure, Vince's daughter. Stephanie McMahon and who else? Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho was the first undisputed champion in WWE history. Chris Jericho is a multi-time world champion, has the most intercontinental championship reigns of anybody, a bona fide legend, and somebody that is definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer if WWE worked like that. Chris Jericho going to the Hall of Fame is absolutely a reason why he should be coming back to WWE. Let's move on to number 3, new matchups. Talking a lot about how there were some old matchups in AEW. A lot of stale matchups for Jericho there. In WWE, the landscape has changed since he last wrestled there in 2017-18. Landscape has completely changed. You have guys like Gunther, who I will get to as one of the reasons why I think Jericho will come back to WWE. You've got Braun Breaker, Damian Priest. You've got a lot of guys that weren't there before. Ilya Dragunov. I mean, who wouldn't like to see Jericho put over Dragunov? Will that happen? Carmelo Hayes, another guy. I think there's probably at least 10, 15 guys. Maybe a Punk matchup again. Although we didn't get that in AEW. Let's look at that in WWE. Number 4, break the walls down. We haven't heard Chris Jericho's iconic theme song, and since he last wrestled for WWE, he switched to Judas. And I like Judas, and I like the fact that people can sing Judas, but I think it's kind of wearing on me a little bit. I want to hear Break the Walls Down, man. I think that's one of the greatest wrestling theme songs of all time, easily. That would get me hyped. The countdown, too. I don't know if you guys like the countdown or not. I was always a big fan of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not going to sing for you guys because it would be horrible. But the theme song, we need to hear that again, guys. As much as I like Judas, I love Break the Walls Down, dude. Number 5, Chris Jericho is not getting any younger. This guy's 55 years old. He's up there. He would be older than, I think, everybody on WWE's roster right now. He's one of the last of an old generation, one of the last Attitude Era guys still hanging around. I think that before his health goes downhill more or something else happens, I think Chris Jericho needs to get back in the WWE ring. Because if you try to do this 5 years from now, or even 3 years from now, let's say Jericho re-ups and he's 58, getting up there, man. You really want to be wrestling? At that point, you're in like Goldberg territory, and we saw how that was, and granted, Jericho was a far better worker than Bill Goldberg ever was, but you can't be rolling this guy out here when he's basically in a wheelchair. So he's 55, he turns 56 later in the year. Arguably too old right now to be doing a run, but I mean, if this was Jeff Jarrett, people would be losing their minds. Just saying. Number 6, the merchandise. Chris Jericho has had some killer merchandise. You know, Jack Daniels parody. I always thought that was cool, even though I couldn't drink at the time. Not that I'm a JD guy. So much cool merchandise that we can have released for Jericho. We could have plaques. We could have posters of him. The t-shirts alone. Replica pants. I don't know. Like, there's a few options for Chris Jericho. I mean, they didn't have like the most like flash. Like Punk is like easy. You do the armrest and that. Like Jericho, you don't quite have that, but there's still a lot of merch. Jericho had some really cool t-shirts. I always loved wearing Jericho stuff because I was always a Jericho guy. I don't fully admit that. Number 7, mentioned him earlier. WWE is in the middle of building up Gunther as the career ender. Happened with Goldberg, John Cena, AJ Styles. What better feather in the cap of Gunther than to retire Chris Jericho? I already mentioned he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Better than Goldberg. Better in-ring than Cena. And I think out of those, he's not better in-ring than AJ. Not at this point. Maybe at one time, not at this point. But I think if you're looking to get the best match out of Chris Jericho, I think Gunther is definitely one of those guys. And you cap this whole thing off with Gunther. And then I don't know where you go with Gunther after this, after he retires everybody. But the fact that they're doing this storyline right now with Gunther, I think is another reason why Jericho will come back. I think they'll be incentivized to get another name for Paul Levesque to build to feed to Gunther. Number 8. Chris Jericho desperately needs to reinvent himself. He was a guy who was famous. For every few years, Chris Jericho would come out doing something different, something new, whether it was cutting his hair, whether it was talking in a monotone voice, or doing the list. You know, he's tried a couple of things in AEW. The learning tree kind of cut on a little bit. It wasn't true reinventing, though. It was still the same old Jericho. And it's been the same old Jericho since like 2022, 2023. Right around the time that he signed that extension, ironically enough, with AEW. Jericho has gotten stale, and I love the guy so much, and I know that he is talented enough to reinvent himself again and freshen things up. And I don't think if he sticks in AEW, that'll happen. I think if he goes to WWE, especially with the new talent there and all the other reasons that I mentioned, I think that would be gangbusters. Number 9, there is mutual interest between he and WWE. From all the reports that we've heard, according to Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful, if Chris Jericho were a free agent, he's not right now, but if he were a free agent, they would be interested in signing him to a contract. So clearly some interest there. Chris Jericho in the past, he hasn't been saying anything negative about WWE. In fact, he said that TNA, WWE's sister cousin promotion, could become the number 2 wrestling company behind WWE, ahead of AEW, who he still currently employed by, was employed by that. Calling AEW the number 3 promotion or alluding to that? I don't know, man. That doesn't sound like a guy who's going to be sticking around in AEW. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, but who knows with the contract? And I can't read this contract. That would be awesome if I could, but I don't have access to it. And number 10, the final reason why. Give Chris Jericho his one big final WrestleMania moment. Could have happened with Kevin Owens. Didn't happen in 2017. Should have happened. They should have main evented WrestleMania, in my opinion. If WrestleMania was 2 days, I think they for sure would have gotten the main event. But it wasn't then. They instead go with Goldberg. And Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens open the show, and reportedly, Jericho said that Vince hated the match. So I think Jericho needs one final WrestleMania moment. You could argue that his biggest WrestleMania moment was against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 19. Maybe when he wrestled Triple H at WrestleMania 18, but we all know that Hogan and Rock should have been the main event that night, not Chris Jericho and Triple H, despite being in the main event. That's not his WrestleMania moment. We need one more. And whether that's getting retired by Gunther this year or next year, I don't know, but I do think that has to happen. Give me your thoughts, guys. Will Chris Jericho come back to WWE? Or will he stay in AEW? Will he continue touring with Fozzy and stay being a rock star? We'll see. If you guys like this video, I'm getting back into this. I don't want to get too, and if you stuck around for the end of this, hey, awesome. So I get personal a little bit here. I took a break from all this stuff. Writing, recording, all this stuff. Something I wanted to chase. I took a break, and I'm not going to get into why, but it's been basically a year. And I have more time on my hands right now, and I figure, what should I do, man? And that's blog and vlog and talk to you guys. And the blog was kind of popping up. TheSuperkick.com. Kept the domain. And I just want to get back to do this, because like even right now, as I'm sitting in my car right now recording, I have a lot of fun doing this. So we'll see, man.